So we'll be looking at what do we mean by GDP, which stands for gross domestic product. Now, this is the market value of all final goods and services newly produced within the borders of the country in a specified time. Now, let's break down some key parts of this definition. Firstly, we're looking at the market value of goods and services so that we can have all of the goods in the same unit so we can easily compare them. Now, we're focusing only on final goods and services and not intermediate goods and services. Otherwise, that would lead to double count. Because say, imagine that you're using oranges to make an orange juice. Now, the value of the oranges is already part of the value of the orange juice. So we would only include the value of the orange juice because it's already incorporating the value of oranges. If you were to include both of them, then we would be double counting the value of oranges. So we're just talking about final goods and services, and we're also talking about all those goods and services which were produced during that specified time period. It doesn't matter whether they were sold and consumed or not, because even if they weren't sold, they will be part of that year's GDP. It's just that they won't be a part of consumption, they will be a part of investment. So any goods and services which are produced during the period, regardless of whether they are sold and consumed or not, they will still be part of that year's GDP. They'll just be part of investment. And later when you consume them, so then in that case, what's going to happen is your investment would go down, your consumption would go up. And because it would go change by the same amount, so your GDP would remain unchanged. So you'll just be counting them once in the year in which the production happened as a part of investment. And this also implies that we're talking about new productions, which basically means that second-hand goods are also excluded from GDP calculation because they would be included in the year's GDP in which they were produced. So now the next thing I'm going to look at is how it only incorporates those goods and services which are produced within the borders of the country, regardless of whoever's producing them. So with GDP, it doesn't matter who is producing it. What matters is where the production is happening. So this means that all those goods and services that are produced by foreigners working in your country are included as part of your country's GDP. But goods and services that are produced by your nationals working abroad are not included as part of your GDP. It will be included in the GDP of the country in which they are working. And lastly, GDP is always calculated for a specified time period, which is usually a year or a quarter. So that's all about GDP, with how we basically incorporate market value of our goods and services. We only include final goods and services and not intermediate goods and services. And we're talking about new production, which implies two things. Number one, that all those goods and services that are being produced are going to be included regardless of whether they are sold and consumed or not, and we will not include any second-hand goods. And lastly, that it's all those goods and services which are produced within the physical borders of your country, irrespective of who's producing them. So that's all about